Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Conservative, not bitter indeed, my friends. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. You know, I want to talk today, as I'm kind of wrapping up. You know that we were out of town earlier this week at the EAA Air Show in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, I should say, and had a great time with my brother, with my son. But there were some things that happened, of course, as we were out of town, and there's some things that caught my attention even as we were in Oshkosh. And one of the things that I saw while I was in Oshkosh, there's a congressman from the state of Florida. His name is Brandon Gill, and he, if you've not seen him before, he's a Republican. He's a conservative guy, and he eviscerates these lunatics from the left who end up coming into a congressional hearing. And of course, they don't want to answer any questions. They play games with him and with the other congressmen on the committees and so forth. These things are painful to watch. But I want to talk specifically about a couple of encounters he had earlier this week. One with Dr. Anthea Hardig, who is the director for the National Museum of American History. Another was with the president of the American Bar Association. You may have seen some of the clips of him, Representative Gill, eviscerating, humiliating these lunatics who are in our government. And I want to talk about this. I want to talk about just how much our government is out of control. Now, I don't say this from a position of helplessness. I do think that we will have the opportunity. We do have the opportunity, I should say, to impact this. I think that this country can still be saved, although I do think we are up against it. I think we're at the 11th hour here. Things have to be done quickly. But I want to talk about just how stupid our government has become. It has abandoned common sense and logic and reason, and it has become a breeding ground for some terrible ideas that, of course, are brought in to our government, funded by you and by me, my friends. These leftists take over government. They take over other aspects of our society as well. But this is the one that we are directly paying for. It does not have to be this way. I want to talk about it today. I want to talk about it and how it impacts your life, your children's lives, your tax dollars, your freedoms and liberties, this constitutional republic. That's where we're going here today on this Friday. Friends, let me ask you something. Would you rather take 2 soft gels a day or spend hours in a doctor's office talking about your high, bad cholesterol? I know what I would choose, my friends. That's why I take Solti. It is an all-natural, clinically proven dietary supplement. It has been proven to lower cholesterol. There are no prescriptions. There are no doctor's visits. This isn't even a drug. It's a natural supplement. All you have to do is take 2 soft gels a day. That is all it takes to take care of your heart health. Friends, your family needs you healthy. Your church, your community needs you strong. This country needs you in the fight, my friends. Solti is a way that you can combat your bad high cholesterol so that you're around for the long haul. So go to Solti.com, Soltea, Solti.com. Promo code Todd gets you a heck of a price on this. You get 50% off your first 3 months supply, and you get free shipping to boot. Soltea.com, SOLTEA, promo code Todd gets you those special offers and pricing. All right, let's start here today. By talking a little bit about how this country was framed to work and how we have deviated from that, evolved from that, or probably devolved from that over the course of time. You could say that we now have effectively a fourth branch of government, the bureaucratic state, which of course raises the question, who is running it? Who is running it? So if you're familiar with the Constitution, you know that inside the Constitution, there are articles that lay out how our government is supposed to function, how it's supposed to work, how it's supposed to be set up. And there are three branches in the Constitution, in our system of government. One of those is the executive branch, that's the presidency. One of those is the legislative branch, that is Congress and the Senate. We have a bicameral legislature, meaning we have two houses, a House of Representatives, which still does, by the way, but which was originally and always intended to be directly elected by the people. The other is called the Senate. There are 435 members of the House. There are 100 members of the U.S. Senate. Each state gets 2 senators. The left doesn't like this, by the way. The left thinks California should have more senators because it, of course, has more people than, say, Indiana or Oklahoma or whatever. But this was the entire point. The folks who framed this Constitution compromised on these things. They went through all of this. Of course, this stuff isn't taught today in public schools. It's definitely not understood. It's misrepresented. It's lied about. And on top of that, they badmouth many teachers, many people in positions where they're teaching people about this great country. They hate this place. They hate this place because they have been indoctrinated by the lunatics on the left, and the lunatics on the left hate this place because it is the antithesis of what they want, which is bigger government, less liberty, more control, higher taxes, less choice for you to have, and they make the decisions. They decide how you live your life. That, of course, is something that I 100% reject, and I know those of you in this audience do, of course, as well. So there's 3 branches. The other branch is the legislative branch. That is the federal courts. And then, of course, the highest court of the land, which is, of course, the United States Supreme Court. But today, what's happening, and I want to move into this discussion about some of the people who have been called before congressional committees to answer for some of the lunacy. But the problem, there's multiple problems, but one of the problems is, in a lot of cases, is that they're not really part of any branch of government. So, some institutions like the Smithsonian was federally created. It is federally funded by your tax dollars. But the government still exercises some influence, but it's not operating within an actual branch of government. So typically, I would maintain, and I would make this argument, the founders deliberately set up our system intentionally in the Constitution to have 3 distinct branches. Of course, the legislative branch makes the law, the executive branch enforces the law, and the judicial branch interprets the law. That's maybe just a very basic, rudimentary understanding, but that's pretty fair assessment of what these branches are generally supposed to be doing. And it's laid out. It's laid out in the Constitution. You can read it yourself. Each branch has its own article where you can go through and see what responsibilities it is given by the people through the Constitution of the United States of America. But the Smithsonian is something. Now, I'm going to tell you what the Smithsonian is because it's candidly a little bit confusing here. So the Smithsonian was created by Congress, and it's not placed under the judicial branch. In fact, it's not really placed under any branch, and there is a group of trustees who effectively run this particular agency. Now, you might think in normal times, in normal circumstances, okay, it's a division that shows, creates museums and helps people understand American history. If you go to Washington, D.C., you'll see a lot of Smithsonian buildings along the U.S. Mall, the Capitol Mall there, and you will see there's the Museum of American History, Science and Space. There's different Smithsonian buildings, but they're, of course, designed to help people go to see and understand American history. But what happens far too often are that the radicals get the reins. Now, I've written about this. I've talked about this. This is a subject that comes up repeatedly in our newsletter, The Inner Circle, which goes out every day by email in the evenings. It has summaries of what we discussed here. It has links to the information that I'm often referring to. It's got things that I don't have time to get to. It's got bonus content. You can listen. You can watch clips of this show on Facebook and so forth, all in the email newsletter, which you can get for free, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Just text the word JOIN to 317-785-1030, 317-785-1030. Text the word JOIN if you want to join that and get the Inner Circle, be part of that community. But anyway, there's something that I call the battlefronts in this cold civil war. And I used to say that there were 7, but I think that there's an 8th one, and I've shared on here before that the 8th is actually, it pains me to say it, but the 8th battlefield is the church here in the United States of America today. And these battlefronts, these places of significance within our culture and our society, these places are under assault. They are, there's a battle for influence, and the left has effectively won control over the vast majority of these what I call pillars of our society. This would include things like government, media, woke business, and so they've taken the reins. They have the influence. Academia is another one. Science is another one. They've taken control of these things, and they use the power and influence that they have by having that control and power to influence the American people drip by drip, almost subconsciously. You know, they're not presenting an argument. They're just talking in a certain way. They're using language that is accepted by the left. They use phrases and terminology that causes people to subconsciously relate to the radically insane and delusional messages of the radical left. And they've been effective at this. But they've taken control of these organizations, these pillars of society, and they have used that to their full advantage. I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, we visited Jamestown, Virginia. Jamestown, Virginia was a settlement. This, by the way, is where Pocahontas, which, by the way, I should tell you, history has documented, the science is spoken here. I am the 13th great-grandson, according to multiple genealogies, of Pocahontas. Now, I will tell you that that has recently become in dispute, but I still stand by the multiple genealogies that say that I am the 13th great-grandson. No joke, by the way. That's a true story. John Rolfe and Pocahontas are in our family tree, which is pretty cool. But I don't act like Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, going around out there acting like I am a Native American and that I have some sort of, that I check off some boxes to be, leading some minority group at a college campus or something crazy like that. I don't refer to myself like she does, but I am going to assert myself as the self-appointed spokesperson of the Pocahontas family. And I will tell you that we are not bothered when Trump calls Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas, because that demonstrates just how much she is trying to engage in identity politics and not talk about the ideas. And I think that that's a good thing when you illustrate through absurdity just how absurd these lunatics have become in our country today. So this is what you've got. You've got the situation set up. Well, let me tell you, finish the story of Jamestown. Sorry, I got Pocahontas got me distracted there. But so we go to Jamestown, my wife and I. This is a long time ago. It's not too far from my brother-in-law who lives in Virginia Beach. And so we go to Jamestown and we're looking at the grounds. It's a neat place. I love history. I like seeing these things. I enjoy it. We've been to places like Gettysburg. We go to national parks. I like this stuff. So we go to Jamestown and I start reading the placards, right? And it says stuff like, I'm going to paraphrase. I tried to use AI to find it. AI told me this wasn't the truth. However, when I pushed back, it told me that these things did happen. These things are reported on some sorts of placards across parks in this country, historical sites. But if you go to this Jamestown and you read the placards, these little signs that you'll find at certain locations on the premises, it said something like this. I'm going to paraphrase it. This has been probably close to 20 years ago. But I remember going there and reading the sign, and it said something like this. Before the white European colonists came to this area, the fish in the stream or the river below were multiple feet long, and after the arrival of the white European settlers, fish became just a matter of inches long. Then there was a question. Do you think it was better before or after the white European settlers came to this country? Which was a real head scratcher for me, because I remember thinking you wouldn't have your stupid display, your museum here to even condescend towards the white European settler if they didn't do these things, if they didn't create the society that they did and so forth. But that's, again, these people don't care about that. But that's the sort of stuff you get in a lot of these leftist academic circles, because this is an intentional sort of process whereby people who have these radical ideas, who have been indoctrinated by these radical professors, who hate America, who love socialism, who love communism, who hate everything about Western civilization, well, minus the wealth that it's created because of free market capitalism. They hate everything about being American. They definitely hate the Christian heritage of this country. And so they take control of these places, and then they use that authority to say, well, we're kind of the spokesperson for what was historically accurate, and they start pushing a bunch of nonsense and propaganda, revisionist history, and so forth down the throats of the American people. And many people are unsuspecting of this because, of course, they have the badge that says Smithsonian Institute. Well, then they start using their position and authority to start pushing the DEI initiatives, the anti-American narratives, and so forth. And so we get to the point where this is out of control. And you have this individual who is running the Smithsonian, and she's not part of the executive branch. She's not really part of the legislative branch either. I don't know where they really fall. And that's part of the problem here, is that, listen, to me, if it's part of what Congress has established through law, it falls under the executive branch to execute. So now by circumventing that structure and order as laid out within the Constitution, now you've got this rogue independent agency that really just operates on its own. And they're not accountable to us because, again, it's over there being... The legislative branch is not designed to manage an operation like that. The executive branch is. It's good to have one person in that branch who's at the top of the food chain, the top of the metaphorical totem pole, if I'm even allowed to say that today, who can say, this is how this branch is going to be run. I'm the person that's ultimately responsible. And of course, there's the organizational chart and the people that are, at each level of that particular branch of government, that their job is to carry out the wishes and the direction of the president of the United States, who right now is Donald J. Trump. And in a perfect world, I see no reason why he should not be able to fire this person, but he can't. He cannot do that because it technically does not fall under his branch. And so you've got Dr. and Thea Hardig, who's out there saying ridiculous things and doing some ridiculous things. And so Brandon Gill, the representative from Florida, when he was given the opportunity to question her about some of the things that's going on under her watch at the Smithsonian, some of the crazy, ridiculous things, he asked her about this. He asked her about some of these things, this thing called the Mass Action Toolkit, which is basically, as you'll find out from this, a toolkit, I don't know what you want to call this thing, an instrument of the left to push their radical agenda, claiming things like objectivity. Objectivity is an aspect of, quote, white supremacy culture in America today. And so Brandon Gill takes the opportunity to question her, this director of the Smithsonian, National Museum of American History anyway, to ask her about this, because this stuff matters. Because what happens is they create this system, and then they say, the leftists that run it, of course, they're nonpartisan. They say they're nonpartisan. Of course, they have an axe to grind. Of course, they have a political preference. In fact, I think that this idea of nonpartisan political activity is hogwash. I don't even think school board. I think that you should declare your party for that. There's no such thing. There is no such thing today as a non-political elected position. It just doesn't exist. We want to believe that there are, at least, well, I don't, but many people do, because they believe apolitical or nonpartisan is above the fray. But in reality, these people who act like they are the most above the fray are often the ones who are getting into the details and pushing the left's agenda behind the scenes harder than anyone. We'll talk about this, and I'll play some clips after the break, but I do have to take a quick time out as I'm glancing down here at the clock. Friends, let's face it, every dollar you spend is a vote for the kind of America that you want to live in. That's why we launched Freedom Marketplace. It's a free directory of businesses that align with your conservative principles and values. These businesses made a promise, no support for leftist candidates, leftist causes, and if they break that promise, they are out of the directory. Haven't had to boot anybody yet, but we absolutely will, my friends, if they violate that. So if you are tired of funding the woke agenda, visit freedommarketplace.net. That's freedommarketplace.net. It's free, it's easy, and it's the right thing to do as well. Freedommarketplace.net, liberty and business for all. Time out for me. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Talking about this disaster of our federal government, how it has just grown into something that's unmanageable. And on top of that, it's turned into something that gives the leftists the opportunity to entrench themselves, take control of aspects of our government, aspects of our culture and civilization that allows them to have the power to push some of this nonsense on the American public. And I've got some questions and answers. Well, we don't get many answers from this, but I want you to hear the questions by Representative Brandon Gill, who asked these questions phenomenally. I love listening to this, and we'll get to those, my friends, here in due course. But before I do that, ever notice how some families seem to have a plan that lasts for generations? That is not by accident. Full Suite Wealth works with people who want their wealth to make a difference for years to come. Their team brings together high-level investment strategies like private equity, private credit, and option strategies, all those things coupled with expert legal guidance. It's all about making sure your vision becomes a reality for the people you love today and in the future. If you're looking to do more than just manage money, if you want to leave a mark and build something lasting, take a look at Full Suite Wealth. FullSuiteWealth.com, that's the website. Again, FullSuiteWealth.com. Build your legacy, secure your future. With that being said, let me play now a little bit of Brandon Gill's exchange with the Smithsonian director here about some of the tools that have been used under her control, under her leadership, some of these radical leftists, just the garbage that's pushed by the extreme radical leftists. She used that, and he's asking her about it, and I'm here for this. I love every second of this. Here's Representative Gill.
Would you say that the goal of history is to be objective?
Thank you, sir, for the question. I think that there are many goals of history, and certainly as you collect, as we do, examine evidence, create scholarship.
Is objectivity one of the goals of history?
We strive to be objective and nonpartisan and not based on any ideology.
So it's one of the goals.
So is that a hard question, by the way? Shouldn't the goal of history to be objective? I understand that the victors are the ones who write the history book. I understand that it's hard to be objective sometimes, but there are things that if you really try, you can be objective, right? It's close to objective. You don't have to funnel everything through a completely partisan or selfish lens. I understand that we all have weaknesses. We have blind spots. I get that. But of course, history should seek to be objective. We want to know what actually happened. We don't want mythical versions of it masquerading as true historical events that we're teaching to our children and to the citizens of this country. We don't want that. Why is that even a hard question? That being said, she at least acknowledged that part of history's purposes is to be objective. So he asks her this.
That seemed a little bit concerning. It certainly does to me, because as part of this white supremacy document that your organization has promoted, objectivity is a core and defining aspect of white supremacy culture. Do you think that it's the goal of the Smithsonian Institution to promote white supremacy culture?
Sir, do you mind sharing with me which document?
Can I pause for a second? So when in these hearings, each representative gets 5 minutes. And I'm telling you, take this to the bank, make no mistake about it. You probably know this already, but if you're new to politics or relatively new, let me explain here. When you're at this stand, you know, so it alternates. It alternates between the Republican side and the Democrat side. So for every Brandon Gill that you get a Jasmine Crockett on the other side. I have a clip from her. I don't think I'll have time to get to it, but you'll hear. She called this, what did she say? She said that this was the Republicans' white supremacist rally or some such thing by asking these questions. Just delusional, ridiculous nonsense. So the name of the game here is to delay. Every second that goes by, tick tock, is an opportunity for her to not have to answer the questions of people like Brandon Gill, who's got her dead to rights here because he says, is it the purpose of history? Is it to be objective? It is. Well, then why is the Smithsonian Institute promoting something here that's called what's a stupid thing called Mass Action Toolkit? And in that toolkit, it claims that objectivity is an aspect of white supremacy culture. So the question kind of writes itself, and kudos to him for asking it. Representative Gill says, if the purpose of history is objectivity or one of those, then are you not admitting by your own materials? Now, they did not create these materials, but they use these materials. They promote these materials. Are you not then saying, by your own logic, that you are claiming, well, that you're part of the white supremacy culture, illustrating the absolute insanity of our institutions? I'm amazed. I'm truly amazed at how people look at things like this and have respect for this stuff today. The only way to restore respect to this organizations like this is to get rid of these lunatics that are running the show, the higher ups. Candidly, you probably have to clean house because they hire people that, of course, believe or agree with their morally bankrupt worldview. But here's her response to that.
White supremacy culture right here. This is part of the mass action toolkit that your organization has promoted for several years now under your leadership. Are you promoting white supremacy culture at the Smithsonian?
Am I promoting a white?
Is that a tough question?
Ma'am, is this a difficult question?
That's right.
No,
Good.
sir, I'm just thinking about the map.
Just go after her. You have to do this. We have people in Washington, D.C. on the Republican side that won't do this. Yeah, is it a tough question? This is ABC logic here. I asked you, Director Hardig, if part of history's purpose is to be objective. You acknowledge that it was. I'm asking you, does that make the Smithsonian a white supremacist culture? Because you say in your materials, the materials that you promote and use, that's exactly what it says objectivity is. He's got her dead to rights, backed into a corner, and she's trying to figure out a way on how to slither out of this. As though, again, this is promoted as intelligent and smart by people on the left. This is pure stupidity. I've shared on this program before. I'll share it again. My dad had a phrase. I love it. My dad had a phrase for people who often get into, listen, it's not a universal thing, but we all know people who have abdicated their responsibilities to think for themselves because they've been programmed, they've been quote unquote educated by some people who truly have just propagandized a lot of these folks, indoctrinated these folks. And so they've basically have just given up the right to think for themselves, and they've had the sense educated out of them. My dad had a term that he used, and it was overeducated idiots. I think that this is Exhibit A. I don't mean to personally attack. I just mean this is the type of person that phrase is designed to refer to. Again, not to be nasty or personal, but to point out the fact that some people have, again, given up the responsibility to think for themselves, and they just parrot the talking points. She got backed into a corner here. There is no way out of this. And now she's trying to use and draw on some of her training, undoubtedly in preparation for this meeting, on how to tiptoe out of this mess, but she can't.
Mass action toolkit, we didn't develop it.
They didn't develop it.
Back to your question,
but you use it.
We're not promoting any ideology.
Does it concern you that your goal is objectivity, one of your goals is objectivity, and your mass action toolkit references objectivity as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture?
Shouldn't that be concerning?
It's not our toolkit.
It is your toolkit.
But you're using it. What the world? She's using it, promoting it. This is what they implemented within their particular, within the Smithsonian. This is what they're using. She's saying, well, we didn't create it. But you are using it. You are training with it. This is exactly what you want your people in your organization to do, how you want them to think.
Yet you've been promoting it for quite some time.
We did not come up with a toolkit, sir.
But you've been promoting it.
It's a clown show.
It is used as a reference, I believe, probably in 2019, 2020.
Yes, under your leadership.
Yeah,
it has been
that's
used
right.
as a reference.
Yeah, under your leadership. She made it sound like it was used in some point way back in time. She wasn't intimately familiar with it. This is her organization. And she's accountable, by the way, I would argue, to nobody. But they use this sort of stuff to push their morally bankrupt worldview on unsuspecting Americans, including young, innocent children who simply do not know better. I've got to take a break here, my friends. Sit tight, back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third final segment of the week. I know it's a sad time, but never fear, we'll be back at it here on Monday, and we've still got this segment as well. But Brandon Gill is still questioning this director at the Smithsonian, the National Museum of American History, which, of course, this whole argument is about how the history of America is portrayed to our citizens and to our young people. What is the Smithsonian telling people is part of our history? Now, listen, we want the truth to be told objectively. And there are things about America's history that are problematic, and those things should absolutely be taught. No one is claiming that America's history on slavery should not be taught. That's not what this is about. However, the people on the left are using America's history to make the argument that politics today, culture today, society today is still the same society that created or operated with slavery back in the 1600s, the 1700s, the 1800s. And so that's the operational premise here. And so people like you, people like me, people like Brandon Gill simply want to say, why are we pushing this stuff? Why are you talking about white supremacy using phrases such as objectivity is a defining aspect of white supremacy culture? It's not just objectivity. You'll find out it's other things as well, which he'll get to here in just a moment, my friends. But friends, there's a lot of confusion out there about kratom. You've probably heard the headlines, and most of those are based on synthetic junk that isn't real kratom at all. Real kratom is safe when it is tested and handled with care, when it's natural, when it's not synthetic. That's what you get from Christopher's Organic Botanicals. They're a family-run company that partners directly with farmers in Indonesia. Every batch is lab tested for purity. There are no chemicals. There are no fillers. There are no shortcuts, my friends. This is a trusted herbal option that's been used for generations, and it comes as a real alternative for people looking for something that doesn't come with a warning label that's a mile long. But do your own research. Christopher's wants you to do this. I want you to do this. And if you conclude that this is something that you would like to try, that you think is safe, that you think makes sense to give a try, start with the Kratom Starter Pack. Coupon code Todd Huff, first and last name, get you 10% off your first order. Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. That's Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency. Okay, let's look at what else. This stupid mass action toolkit that was promoted and used by the Smithsonian. Let's see what it has to say about other terms, other aspects of white supremacy culture that exists today. Listen to this exchange.
Is it important to be polite?
Excuse me, sir?
Is it important to be polite?
Yes, sir.
It's also interesting because the same mass action toolkit that your organization has been promoting references politeness as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture. Ma'am, are you a white supremacist?
I love it. That's exactly.
No, sir.
You're not.
And square that
Can
up.
you help me square
That's
why
right.
your organization says that being polite is part of being a white supremacist?
I'm not exactly familiar with that passage of the mass action toolkit, which is not.
I can show you the
one that we
passage. It's right
developed.
here.
It's right here.
I don't.
This is
Pardon me?
what.
I said I just read you the passage.
Yeah, he says I've read it to you. I mean, why are you using something that you sound like you have no familiarity with? I actually think that you might really believe this stuff, but you just don't like to be caught out here in the spotlight, out in front of the cameras, because you know that the average person is going to have a problem with this. This is what's happening in our institutions. This is what's happening in the bureaucratic state. This is what's happening with organizations like the Smithsonian that don't fit anywhere within our actual constitutional government structure. It doesn't fit anywhere. It's operating on its own. I mean, there's a board of regents, and there's J.D. Vance is on that board, the Chief Justice. There's 3 senators, 3 congressmen, and some other people from the general public. But the problem is you can't fire people. Trump can't fire people like this. This lady needs to be fired. This stuff should not be happening. This is 100% biased. This is not teaching objective truth about American history. Again, no one here is saying that you should not teach the terrible things that have happened in American history, but you also should not be using this to further political messaging that is used by the radical left today in the Democrat Party, and that's precisely what's going on. He called her out for saying politeness, the toolkit that she used, that she promoted at the Smithsonian, said that politeness was, quote, a defining aspect of white supremacy culture. So if you're polite, to his point, are you a white supremacist? She said, yes, I think that I should be polite. So are you a white supremacist? And if not, then why are you using something that is teaching this garbage? This isn't just one sentence that he pulled out of a document. These sorts of things are peppered all throughout this sort of, this toolkit, this curriculum, this training, and so forth. It's pure garbage. It's pure garbage, and kudos to him for calling her on it, for continuing. He knows. You should know by now, as he does, that these folks try to evade these questions. They try to tiptoe. They try to delay. But he does a great job of staying on task and asking these questions simply in a way that the average person can understand, that illustrates just how bad things are in our government. But I've got to run. My friends, have a great day. We'll talk soon. SDG.